How do you write beautiful and compelling nonfiction? Well, today we are going to hear a strategy from David Foster Wallace that is more relevant than ever in 2024 for writers like you. And if you guys don't know, my name is Ian, and writeconscious is the headquarters of everything related to David Foster Wallace here on YouTube. In the playlist down below, I already have 100 videos on Wallace, and that list is growing daily. But my goal is also to help writers like you create works that can transform the lives of others so that we can create a literary renaissance and make books cool again. But the way we're going to start that is with this strategy by Wallace that we're going to hear about now. Quote, the somewhat neurotic, hyper-conscious guy showing you how weird this thing is that not everybody thinks is weird. I think it's more trying to notice stuff that everybody else notices, but they don't really notice that they notice, which I think a fair number of good comedians do too. And Wallace is 100% correct here. And that is our job as a nonfiction writer and even as a fiction writer, but to point out a different perspective on something that we take for granted. And everyone out there, if you are a writer or not a writer, should be thinking about writing nonfiction because there is a much smaller skill gap to write good nonfiction and release it for free on something like Substack than write a good short story. Because many of you guys grew up in the public school system. You went to college. You've had to write. You maybe have to write technically at your job. You write emails. You've been bombarded with articles and nonfiction pieces and documentaries and conversations throughout your entire life. And in 2024, Wallace's style is more relevant than ever because we are like David Foster Wallace Jr.'s. We have this overload of information. Many of us have ADHD or kind of weird, antisocial, don't fit in. Back in the day, in 1996, Wallace was an enigma. Today, in the writing world, or I should even say the reading world, a lot of people are more aligned with the David Foster Wallace than they are with even like a Cormac McCarthy in terms of who they are and how they write. And fiction, if you're trying to write as good of a short story as David Foster Wallace or one of your favorite authors, first of all, fiction has a lot to do with talent. Because the ability to write well and in a good style won't cut it. There's this magical element of connection that can be learned, but will take a really long time. Storytelling and plot and characterization, flow, rhythm. These are all things that are important. Well, not plot and characterization, but there are a lot less working elements in a nonfiction piece. And one of the strategies I'm talking about over on my free writing school, the link is down in the description below, where I teach you guys how to build your reading audience and how to become a better writer for free. And that is school.com/writeconscious. I'm telling everyone over there to get into the nonfiction game, even if you write fiction, if you really view yourself as a fiction author and as a poetry author, because it makes people care about you. It makes them connect deeper with you. I know a lot of people who have tried to read Infinite Jest and are like, oh my God, like that was hard. And then they go back and read David Foster Wallace's essays, read his biography. And then when they get to know him more, they are able to finish Infinite Jest, but they're not smarter individuals after, during their second attempt. They just want to finish it that time. They have given themselves a reason. Reading David Foster Wallace's nonfiction doesn't prepare you at all for Infinite Jest, let me just tell you. He's a very clean nonfiction writer. And when you think about a strategy, about how to overcome writer's block and perfectionism and start kind of inching your way closer to, building a reading audience and improving your skills, doing neurotic, hyper-conscious dumps on things that people don't really want to analyze is a great way to do it, because I'm sure you've been there before. You're at the dinner table with your family or hanging out with your buddies, and you mention some crazy conspiracy, or you start talking about something, you see everyone roll their eyes, and some of the time, though, it's about something normal. It's about an event that you guys are witnessing, and everyone else just takes it for granted. They'll say, why are you being so judgmental? Why are you being so critical? But that's a short story, or that's a nonfiction piece right there. And Wallace mentions comedians. You don't see comedians. I mean, sometimes they build a story from scratch. They talk about a relationship and they kind of take you through a couple punchlines toward kind of this big reveal. But a lot of comedy and, set up punchline, quick joke comedy relies on looking at something from a different perspective. Like one I have in my head right now, and this isn't the exact joke, but Hans Kim said something about going to the library on Martin Luther King Day and being confused that it was closed because the library is open on Hitler's birthday. Shouldn't we close it on Hitler's birthday and have it open for Martin Luther King Day? Stuff like that. You could write an essay on that. You could write a short Substack on something simple like that and people are going to be interested. If you wrote on that, I would probably click on it. I'd be like, if you had a catchy title and thumbnail. And Wallace went hard. Like, he would spend months on these essays. And because of blog culture, and this is a good thing, you can post something that's 5,000 words online and it doesn't have to be perfect. And the better and more intense and complex it is, then that's great. But one of my favorite online nonfiction authors releases probably up to 10,000 words a week and has for over a decade. And he just writes it straight from the heart, doesn't plan anything. It's mostly observances from his life and things that are going on. Does one passive revision, and he's a multimillionaire from his writing. And he's basically embodying a little less intense, of a David Foster Wallace style, but he's still highly successful. And let me tell you guys now how to start on this journey. First of all, you need to go create an account on Substack right now. That is where you need to be writing. I host a David Foster Wallace course, David Foster Wallace book club, and a ton of other stuff on Substack that I'm sure you've heard me talk about before, a writing group. And I'll put the link down in the description below, but I also have a bunch of free stuff. And so if you want to be a writer, go create an account, follow me, look at some of my free writing, and you'll see it's not something intense. It's not something out of this world. I can sit down and do it in a couple hours. And the reason I'm mentioning this is, of course, I get traffic from the YouTube channel all the time because I'm advertising. I send out my blog posts to the email list. But Substack has given me hundreds at this point of people who just read my free stuff. They're not interested in all my crazy courses and book clubs, but they like what I have to say in terms of my nonfiction. And I've gained an organic fan base. Because if you are on Substack, you are on a free speech platform where people write a lot. Okay, so you have the platform, you have where you're going to write. Make an account, upload a profile picture, think of a cool name, fix the colors. This step should take you no less than 30 minutes. Then I want you to think in your head of that special rant that you give to people you're just getting to know, something that you've been working on. It's almost like a comedy bit. Like, for instance, before I became a booktuber, and I currently still am, I have a channel on yoga. And I've been talking shit about superficiality in yoga and how it's been corporatized and turned into a joke for over a decade now, and writing about it. But I've been doing yoga since I was 14 years old and became a teacher when I was 18. And so for 7 years, I was just talking to people. I would mention it all the time and I had all these ideas. And so then when it finally came time to writing about it and like doing these brain dumps, I had all this stuff already ready. All I had to do was put it in writing format, organize it, and then kind of flesh out some of the ideas. Because obviously in a conversation, you don't get to go on a 5,000 word rant, hopefully, unless you're a narcissist, about kind of your idea. But in a nonfiction piece, you can. And so start with things that you are really strong in like verbal conversation. Because most of the time, these are things that people don't observe. And then take us through it step by step. Don't be afraid about writing too much. Go on rants, put footnotes in there. The more the better, because some people aren't going to like your stuff. This isn't a blog post. This isn't trying to rope people in. You are dealing with, on Substack, people who read intense things every single day. And so show your personality like Wallace does. Wallace talks about his family. He talks about his life. He talks about personal experiences. And this is why I personally don't recommend writing under a pen name, because it's a lot harder to care about someone if you don't know who they are. Like, my name is Ian Kadnack and I live in Tucson, Arizona. I'm a teacher. I do these things. These are my hobbies. This is what I care about. You guys can kind of gain a general perspective of what I'm like. But behind a pen name, even if you write a lot, you always have to be hiding behind the location that you're at and your name and your experiences, and it creates a lot of problems. Okay, so you finish the article, obviously polish it up, but then you have to start working the system a little bit. Think of a catchy title. Get on Canva, make a sick, thumbnail or some cover art, and then post it. And I can't guarantee you guys that anyone's going to read that one. But if you keep this up, if you keep the game going, if you keep writing, which is just a great exercise in general to become a better writer. It's like, how do people get better at basketball? They just practice and keep doing it and play games over the course of years. That's what releasing these small nonfiction pieces are. You're starting something, finishing something, having people read it online. And if you write one of these a week, and that's what we do over on the Write Conscious Writing group, we write a poem every single day and a short story or essay every single week. If you write 52 essays that are 1,500 words every single week, which is only a couple hours of writing, and you put the smallest amount of focus in making sure the title and maybe the headline and the thumbnail are somewhat catchy, I can guarantee you by the end of this year, you will have 100 people who care about your work. And like I said, if you are into fiction, if you don't care about nonfiction at all, How many readers do you have right now? How many people care about your work? Because posting your short stories to Substack, unfortunately, doesn't have the same result as, functioning in the algorithm and finding readers. I would say 85% of people on Substack are there for the nonfiction specifically. But most of those people are down for a short story from a person who they care about. And then if you are a fucking OG, if you have great short stories and you have these people who've been reading your stuff and then you deliver one to them, they're going to get excited. They're going to be like, holy shit, you're a good writer. Then suddenly you're going to start gaining momentum in that realm. The first thing that we need to worry about is preserving our best stuff. And I hate to see authors who launch a novel and no one reads it. I mean, there's nothing more heartbreaking to me to see someone who has a short story and they post it on Substack because they couldn't get it published anywhere and they get 0 readers. It's heartbreaking to me to see, even worse, a novel just get 0 sales on Amazon. And so I recommend never publishing a novel until you at least can guarantee that someone or, a group of people hopefully are going to be interested. And so I know that everyone out there has the ability to write at 60 to 70% of the level of David Foster Wallace in a similar way, observing these kinds of things like a state fair or an event in your city, or even a book. Wallace would write about, he's written about Dostoevsky, he's written about Kafka, Updike, but he's not doing literary criticism. He's making fun of Updike. He's talking about Kafka's humor. He's talking about Dostoevsky's biography by Joseph Frank. Those are all interesting things. And so if you're also struggling, if you don't know what to write about what you're reading about. But just think of what I do. I could be a Benjamin McAvoy. I could just do straight book reviews and talk about books and just do A to B. But I go on tangents, I go on rants, that helps you guys get to know me because that's who my favorite content creators are. And it's the same with writing. I know there are people who are better nonfiction writers than David Foster Wallace. I know there are better fiction authors. I will admit that. But there's something about his maximalist style that helps draw you in and really feel like you're getting to know him. And so thank you guys for being here. Once again, if you want this whole presentation and everything I know about building an audience on Substack, on YouTube, an email list, whatever, go check out my school. And I also talk about over there on how to improve your skills as a writer. So I will see you guys over there.